Hello lads and lasses, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. Today we're going to finish up the whole topic of modes with a look at the Ionian, Lydian and Mixolydian modes. Now then, that solo that you just heard me playing was based on the Lydian mode, which is one of my favourites as it happens. And as ever, we will be taking a look at the whole lead guitar aspect of using the modes, but it is absolutely essential before you go there that you understand the chordal aspect of what's going on, because you can only use the Lydian mode, as I was using there, if the chord sequence is in the Lydian mode. So you really need to understand that chord side of things first. So let's crack on with that. Okay, what you can see here are the three different keys which contain the chord of A major. And just a little reminder, a key is a group of chords based upon the notes of a major scale. And a major scale is a group of notes which from any given starting point always follows this series of steps. It always goes tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, or in slightly more guitar friendly terms, 2 frets, 2 frets, 1 fret, 2 frets, 2 frets, 2 frets, 1 fret. And if we start that on an A note, it gives us the notes of A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and finally back to A again. And that gives us the chords of A major, B minor, C sharp minor, D major, E major, F sharp minor, and G sharp minor 7 flat 5. And once you're comfortable with that principle, you can figure out what the chords are in any given key simply by following that logic. And you can see here that I've also given you the key of E major, which contains an A major chord in position 4, and there's also the key of D major, which contains the A major chord in position 5. So let's have a look and see how this relates to the whole business of modes. Now you may remember that last time we looked at a useful little aide-memoire for remembering the mode names. It goes, I decided playing loud means a lot, which corresponds to the modes of Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian and Locrian, or some people say Locrian. And what that means is that if you take a chord sequence based around the chord of A major using chords from the key of A major, you are said to be in the Ionian mode. If you make up a chord sequence based around the chord of A major again, but this time using chords from the key of E major, you are said to be in the Lydian mode. And finally, if you take a chord sequence based once again on an A major chord, but made up of chords from the key of D major, then you are said to be in the Mixolydian mode. And each one of these modes has a different character and a different flavour, a different sound if you like. So let's hear what they all sound like in comparison to each other. Here are some chord sequences based on each one of those three modes: the Ionian, the Lydian and the Mixolydian. Right, so now you understand the chord aspect of these three modes. What does it take to play lead guitar using those modes? Well, let's have a look. Right, well, here's our Ionian mode chord sequence once again. And just to remind you, the Ionian mode means that it's centered around the chord of A major. That is the chord that gives it its musical center of gravity, if you like. And all of the other chords in the sequence are taken from the key of A major. And when you have the key chord, A major, also being the tonality chord, then you are in the Ionian mode. And the natural choice of scale to play over that would be the A major pentatonic, which you can see here on the left. And that contains the notes of A, B, C sharp, E and F sharp. But if you want to step things up a little bit and start playing lead guitar with something more modal, we need to investigate a bit further. Basically, you look within the chords and you will discover that the C sharp minor and E chords both contain the note of G sharp, and the B minor and D major chords contain a D note. And if we add those into the pentatonic scale fingering that you can see there, we get something that looks like this. And that collectively is known as the A Ionian mode scale. And here it is being demonstrated. And on to the Lydian mode. Once again, here's the chord sequence, and you can see that we have the chords of A going to B, then to E, and back to A again. And then from the A we go to a G sharp minor, to a C sharp minor, then E, and back to A again. Now all of those chords can only exist together in one key, and that's the key of E major. We covered that earlier on in the lesson. But the tonality, the musical centre of gravity of this chord sequence is very definitely the A major chord. And the way that I've achieved that here is simply by keeping an A bass note going on underneath all of those chords. A very effective technique to keep the piece of music centred around one particular chord. Just keep that chord's bass note going underneath everything, and it works. Now then, Let's have a look and see what we're going to do lead guitar wise over this. Well, because A major is very definitely the tonality of this chord sequence, it makes sense to start off with the A major pentatonic. And you can see it there. It has the notes of A, B, C sharp, E and F sharp in it. But if we want to step things up to more of a modal lead guitar approach, we need to add some more notes, and we will find those in the chords. If we look at the B chord, for example, that contains a D sharp note, and you'll also find that D sharp note in the G sharp minor chord. The E chord contains a G sharp note, and so does the C sharp minor. So we have two extra notes that we can add into the pentatonic scale, G sharp and D sharp. And if we plot those on that scale diagram, it looks like this. And collectively, that little scale pattern there is known as the A Lydian mode scale. And here it is being demonstrated. Finally, we come to the Mixolydian mode, and we're basically going to follow the same principle as we did with the Ionian and Lydian modes. All of these chords here, the A, D, G, F sharp minor and B minor, they can all only exist together in the key of D major. But once again, we've kind of skewed things around, so it's the A chord, not the D chord, the A chord, which is the musical centre of gravity or tonality for what's going on. That's the chord which makes everything sound at rest or finished, basically. That's what the tonality is, essentially. And once again, because the tonality is A major, we choose A major pentatonic as the basis for any lead guitar. And I'm sure you know the drill by now. All you got to do is look within the chords to see which extra notes can be added in. And you don't have to look very far, because you can see that we've got a D chord there, which obviously has a D note in it. And so does the G chord, actually, and the B minor chord. And the G chord also contains a G note. So we've got two extra notes that we can add into the pentatonic, D and G. And if we add those in onto that scale diagram, it looks like this, which collectively is known as the A Mixolydian mode scale. And finally, here's how that sounds. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of this two-part lesson on modes. Today we've looked at the Ionian, Lydian and Mixolydian modes, and in the previous part 1 of this video we looked at the Dorian, Phrygian and Aeolian modes. Now, the keen-eyed amongst you have probably noticed that we've not made any mention at all of the Locrian or Locrian mode. And the reason for that is because it's useless. Seriously, it is. Let me explain. Basically, as you've seen with this whole modal business, it's all based around making one chord within the key into the focal point, the tonality. It's the chord that everything sounds settled and resolved on, basically. And the Locrian mode is based around a minor 7 flat 5 chord, which sounds like this. And I would contend that it is impossible to make any chord sequence sound resolved or settled on a chord that is as dissonant as that. The Locrian mode does have some uses, limited uses in jazz, as a way of creating tension over certain types of chord, but even that, it's not the first choice of scale. To all intents and purposes, it is pretty much redundant. It's a legacy thing. It's only there because of the way music has evolved over centuries. So you can pretty much ignore it, frankly. And there you have it. That's all about modes. I hope you found this useful, informative, and perhaps even a little bit inspiring. Coming up just before we finish this video is a short little solo that I did where I go from the Ionian mode into the Lydian mode into the Mixolydian mode, so you can hear how all of these different modes sound in comparison to each other. And you'll see it kind of announced on screen which mode I'm using at any given time, but hopefully you'll also be able to hear the difference between the modes as well. And if you've enjoyed this video, then why not hit the subscribe button, and that way you'll get to see more of them. If you live on Teesside, then get in touch with me via the details at the end of the video, and you can book yourself some tailored one-to-one guitar tuition, any level, beginner to advanced, any style, and your first lesson is free. And if you like good guitar music, how do I describe it? Yes, catchy tunes with flashy guitar is pretty much what I say. Then you might want to check out my new album. It's called The Whisky Made Me Do It, and it's available on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, all the usual places. And even though I say so myself, it really is rather good. And with that, I'll bid you good day and see you all next time. Bye for now, folks.